Hey, I'm Dave with a hat. Welcome to Shop Talk. Thought I'd get started tonight by going over a couple of the gnarliest bugs that I've fixed in a long time. And I happened to fix them both this week. They didn't solve the ultimate problem with the program I'm trying to fix, but they were definite bugs. What I'm building is an AI that can learn to play the game Tempest from Atari in 1980, the original arcade game. And to give you some background on how it works, there are 20 or some number of MAME clients, each running a copy of Tempest, and every frame, so 200 times a second because they're running unthrottled, roughly, each one of them contacts the server and says, here's the current state of the game, and what is my reward for this frame, and what should I do in terms of the next control input? Should I move left? Should I move right? Should I fire? Should I super zap? What should I do? And so every frame, the server talks to the AI and says, what should it do? Here's the state, records the state, and then it uses that for later training as well, and it returns a control decision back to the game so the game plays. And it still runs at 200 frames a second, so there's like 4,000 round trips to the server. It's running on our Dell 7875 Pro workstation, so it's got lots of CPU, and it's got a couple of RTX 6000 ADA cards that are very underutilized by my tiny model. But the bug I had is that when you're doing an AI, when you have a frame like this, whether it's a chess game and you've got the board state, or it's a Tempest game and you've got the game state, you need to somehow score it and say this is a good state to be in or a bad state to be in. And I assign two values. I assign a subjective value for things like aligning with the enemy, and I assign an objective value for things like you killed an enemy and actually got points for it. And I detect that by looking for changes in the value of the points. And what I do is I look up, if the points went up, then you made 150 points, probably killed a flipper, and I give you 150 credit for that. All well and good. The problem was, I didn't check for going backwards. So when you got to the end of the game and the score reset to 0, it would immediately say, oh, you just earned negative 32,450 points. We're going to just put that on your account for the very start of your game. And all these games would then play and never dig themselves out of this massive hole, and it would reverse train on this massive penalty that I was assigning to it. So it was a bit of a mess. So I found that bug and fixed it. And that one reminded me of the olden days because it was pulling code out of 6502 memory in BCD decimal. If each pair can represent a single digit, 0 to 9. And so you only have 99 as the maximum number you can have in a byte in that case, instead of FF. But I digress. The other bug that I hit was there's a function call that I have to call to step the model, to do a forward pass through the model and predict all the future Q values. And that's a complicated way of saying it has to just walk through and figure out, well, if you did this, what would it probably turn out to be like in the game, something like that. And you have to, the function that you call takes like 8 parameters, and I was passing all 7 of them. Now, the problem with that is that there are supposed to be 8, and I was only passing 7, and I was missing my continuous loss function. It didn't notice because it was all in Python, and this is Lua and Python, this whole project, and it's really my first complex Python program, but it's not type safe, so it didn't care that I was passing a tensor of the wrong size, you know, for the following parameters that came after it. It just goes, I guess we'll just make that work. And of course, it didn't work in the long run, but it compiled and it ran and it didn't get an error. It just substituted a null for the last parameter. You know, if you're in C++, you would assume that those variables are going to be typed, and you would then, for all your arguments would shift down one. They wouldn't line up. They'd all be the wrong type. You get compiler errors. It would tell you right then and there. But in Python, being freely typed, you don't get that kind of warning. So that was a hideous one to find because I had looked at the code so many times and it looked perfectly right because you don't recognize it. Oh, there's supposed to be 8 arguments to that function call. So those are my 2 ugly ones of the week. And from there, we'll dive right into some good questions from users on the previous videos that we've aired. So let me bring in my co-host, Glenn. How you doing, Glenn?
I'm doing well, Dave.
Good to hear. What do you got for questions for me today?
Well, we got a lot and some pretty strong technical ones based on your last Dave's Garage episode here. So we're talking about this, how AMD stole Intel's future. And some folks will question on that reference of stealing too, so we'll get to that later. First one here comes High Tech Geek. He says, so is AMD the king today, and will Intel recover?
Well, right now I would say AMD is definitely the king, especially in terms of new PC sales and stuff. Well, not new PC sales, but builds. AMD seems to be pretty dominant. From the numbers I've seen coming out of local PC builders, it's like 20 to 30% Intel right now. So, yeah, it seems like, and in the data center, they've got Epic. Intel, of course, has new solutions and stuff, new chips that came out this year for the data center, up to, 256 cores or some crazy number. But AMD seems to be eating their lunch there as well. So I own some Intel stocks, and I bought them, back at like $20 when I was sure that Intel wasn't going to go away because I'm pretty sure the government won't let them die. But I thought the same thing about Commodore, and my Commodore's back, but my stock isn't worth anything. So in this case, I wasn't sure. But I figured I'd take a flyer on it, and it's done all right because a lot of people invested in Intel and their foundry plan. If it works out in their 5 steps in 4 years or whatever their crazy ambitious plan under Pat Gelsinger that got started there, if they do that, it'll be great. And America needs it to work because being single source out of TSMC, nothing against Taiwan, but they're in a precarious position where they are, and for the entire world supply of chips to be that precariously positioned is a dangerous thing, I think. So I'm looking forward to Intel having some fab capacity, and I don't know why it's not as simple as they just order the machines from ASML and set them up and turn them on, plug them in. Seems easy, but then again, that's why I'm a software guy. So.
One of many reasons. It's interesting you mentioned the investment side. Beamer Mem 3 says, who's here after the AMD stock went up 30% in one day? And On the Saddle says, very technical. Could you tell us if we should invest in Intel or AMD? No, I'm not sure if we should invest in Intel or AMD, or if we should invest in Intel or AMD, either one or both. But
you're in luck because I have a detailed investment plan that's available only to Patreon members.
You do have some Intel, but that was based on...
Yeah, I do not have any AMD, which, so I saw the bump, did not ride the bump. But
E8 root. So didn't asterisk, he said precisely that suffix of star 32, indicate that it was a 32-bit app? He says, I literally ran Task Manager from Windows XP and the x64, and there are barely any 32-bit apps running, but they're still there. And I was surprised, too. I assumed that star 32 meant it was 32-bit.
So one of two things happened. Yeah. Either Dave C., when he told us about it, misremembered, and he put the asterisk on 32-bit processes, or he initially had it on 64-bit, but then why would you have an asterisk on a 64-bit system? So it makes more sense to have the asterisk on 32-bit. So they probably changed it at some point. Whether it was him misstating it or just it changed at some point, yeah, it looks like in the screenshot that I had there, the 32-bit programs are the ones that get the asterisks.
Into this Intel stuff here, we got a few folks with a lot of questions about that. Termonia says, since you worked at Microsoft, can you explain the Wintel pattern for us from the inside, like where OS and platform decisions repeatedly seem to advantage the Intel hardware?
Yeah, I never saw that. I mean, we took advantage of whatever Intel made for hardware, but I didn't get the sense that Intel was making hardware for us or vice versa. I'm sure at some point, I'm not saying there was collusion, but at some point they were so mutually interested in each other's success that even if they weren't colluding, it makes sense they're both aligned to the same goals and incentives, so they're going to work in each other's interests. So don't know if you can assume malice there, but it's certainly not that case today. But in those days, there was really only one chip maker, and there was really only one software maker, and it was Microsoft and Intel. So,
and it was working, so...
Yeah, why did you disturb the status quo?
Why not continue to play nice, eh? Clark,
competition is
YouTube,
good.
Fact or Fiction. Did Microsoft force Intel directly or indirectly to adopt the AMD x64 and to drop their x64 version?
Well, there's probably a third choice, which is they didn't force anybody to do anything. I don't know that anybody forced anybody to do anything other than by market forces, and AMD had a very clever and well thought out solution that Intel probably couldn't best sufficiently in order to come along and say, but this is even better, so forget about that thing. It was good enough and so good that I think they had to adopt it.
High Tech Geek says, why did Intel crater over the past 5 years? Is that why? Is it this AMD sort of...
No, Intel had something of a lost decade, 10 years, about 4 or 5 years ago, where they just did nothing to advance the chip technology, and they got stuck on 14 nanometer for a long time. They just added a couple cores, and we got stuck on 2-core and 4-core chips for a decade, it seemed. And yeah, I mean, there was 6-core and more chips in the Xeon line and stuff, but the desktop wasn't advancing very fast until AMD came along and started launching leapfrogging, and then they started chasing each other. But Intel wasn't accustomed to running at that rate, and so they kind of got left behind.
Evan Kalbach. Dave, he says, RIPv1 or RIPv2?
Sorry, don't know.
Okay.
I'm guessing RIP is some old protocol that I'm not. I was using it in the register instruction pointer sense for the AMD 64 stuff. Okay. But I don't catch the reference, but I'm going to guess that's what's going on.
Yeah, he says it was enjoyable, but you lost me faster than John Chambers at Cisco going into the weeds on the latest routing and switch technologies at Cisco iOS interactions and functions. Guess if you're at Cisco, you might know what that means too.
Hey, I just figured out Cisco means like San Francisco. I didn't realize that.
Oh, really?
Even their logo is the damn bridge.
Yeah.
So I figured, they're based in San Francisco. That's cute. And then still didn't make the link until about 2 years ago. Like, oh, Cisco. Oh,
you'll get it in a couple months. It'll hit you.
Yeah, eventually.
The captain. He's got a couple questions. First one, do you think Itanium ever had a chance?
Yeah, if the compilers had materialized, it would have had a better chance. But the fact that AMD allowed you to just take all your old code and just pretty much use it without recompiling even was a big win. So everything that Itanium did was going to force the ecosystem to change and update and make you recompile your binaries and rewrite stuff. So it was always going to be up against that hurdle because it was a completely new instruction set. Does that mean it was doomed? No, not necessarily, but it was uphill for it. So
his second question says he recently read an article about Linus Torvolds going at the Risc V Foundation for wanting to implement something called Big Endian. And why would the guy who made Linux care?
He shouldn't. I mean, everything is little Endian these days, so where you get the byte order of the x86. In the old days, you could say Motorola 68000 had the opposite byte order, and maybe Risc. Well, I think the MIPS could be booted either way or something weird. Maybe that was Alpha. One of them could be booted either way. It's a religious argument, but I think the reality is that all data now is done by little Endian machines, and if you're going to do interop, you have to do it very carefully because that assumption probably has spread pretty far by now.
Saul287 says, you're wrong about Itanium. It was on queue, went in, performed like crap, never redesigned, never fixed, never really improved. Just a slow multi-block thing that tried to work together, and all blocks worked desynchronized and at different speeds. Says there's a couple of videos that detail its history.
It reminds me a bit of the IBM Stretch. I did the episode on that.
Right.
There would be a whole row of massive racks, and this would be the shift register, going down here for these racks. And the Itanium had all these blocks, and the Stretch could run them all async as well. Yeah. And so the Stretch tried to parallelize stuff like that, and they were hand coding assembly language, and they found that it was way harder to parallelize code than people had assumed before. Even when the hardware blocks could be split up to run in parallel, staging your instructions and writing your code to actually take advantage of that and make use of it is very challenging. And so it doesn't surprise me that the compiler authors had trouble automating that process as well.
Radek C says, speaking of Itanium and other VLIW designs, can someone explain how they were planning to design the next generation cores while keeping software compatibility?
Well, they weren't. They were not going to preserve software compatibility. Maybe it would have a whole x86 core on board or something where it could go and run legacy code, but that was not contemplated in any of the implementations that I saw. So, no, fully incompatible in every way.
Ben Culp says, Dave, what would have happened if Intel, instead of creating Itanium with HP, had just purchased Alpha from DEC? Would we still
probably
end up where we are
the same
today?
Thing? Yeah,
okay.
Probably the same thing, because if you went Alpha, you were faced with the same thing. At least the calling conventions and all that were similar if you were on Windows, but you were faced with a whole new architecture. You're faced with recompiling your code, rewriting any platform-independent pieces. Like the pinball port that I did, was the challenge in it. It was a lot of it was fixing x86 specific things and Windows 95 specific things that weren't true on NT or weren't true on MIPS, Risc, or Alpha or PowerPC. So it's always extra work when you change ecosystems.
Andreas Setterlind, wondering if we'll ever see backwards compatible x86-96 or x86-128 from Intel and AMD, or if ARM will beat them to that with the ARCH96 and ARCH128 for any classical processors with 122-bit instruction set extension? Or
I don't know.
computing?
I just don't see why 64 bits is not enough. Maybe in the quantum world where you're doing all the possibilities or something, but certainly in a bounded universe, 2 to the 64, that's a lot of bits.
That spitting bits like chiclets. PRS crystallized. Great video, but wasn't AMD 64 a missed opportunity to put a much better 64-bit ASM level instruction set in place? So the AMD 64 still required assembler modification, didn't have to be Risc, just a lot cleaner.
Yeah, I assume most of them were extensions to the 32-bit instructions, and so they kept everything orthogonal. There's nothing to say that the new instructions that were 64-bit only couldn't have been Risc V or some weird instruction set. But in order to keep things simple simpler for software vendors and implementers, they kept orthogonality with the old instruction sets. So everything works the same way as it used to.
Steve Richter says, does the Windows OS know it is running on AMD and then runs code that uses the extended registers?
Yeah, the compiler does. When the operating system is compiled and become into the binary, it knows how many registers are available and how to assign them and everything else. So yeah, it takes advantage of them for that system for sure.
A couple folks here, AlphaCat and Sean Singh. Again, do you think x86 will ever go to 128 bits sometime in the future? And I think that's maybe in quantum computing if it's needed for that level of computational stuff.
That's the only, I mean, even the biggest AI models don't put a dent in your address space right now. So
Yeah. Greetings Earth and Tom's Chi both questioned the stole? Stole it, really?
well, it stole like a base.
Yeah.
It was legal. It wasn't a crime, but they stole the opportunity from Intel.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
kind of like stealing a base is like my best analogy, I guess.
Stole a bit. That's right. That's right. Yeah, it's part of the game.
Yes.
Is it? Yeah.
An accepted part.
Og Vorbis says, so now I learned that Microsoft built SQL Server for Titanium. Please share your thoughts why there is no SQL Server for ARM. This is what keeps me from having an ARM machine. It'll also be nice to hear what you think the reason is.
You know, I honestly don't know. I don't know anybody on the SQL team, so I'm guessing it's just market demand, that there's just not enough ARM boxes out there that people would run in licensed SQL Server, that they won't also just run an Intel chip instead. Or not Intel, but x86, x64.
Yeah, and Mick YT says, is there an ARM story too? The same sort of...
Well, there would be a good story behind how you got Apple to move to an ARM core-based system from Intel. Probably a good story there. I don't know the full details on that one. I was just a consumer through that one.
Keyboard Puncher says, hey, would you make a video about the Intel APX?
If I knew what APX was, yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Can't know it all, man.
Maybe it's an AP10? No, I don't know. Roman numerals. Every time I see an X or a V, I don't know whether it's an X or a 10 or a V or a 5. Custom etching and engraving. Hey, he says, speaking of Google, I fell prey to losing remote access to my Nest Thermostat. Wonder if you have or know of an open source thermostat that I could replace it with.
No, I've got a lot of home automation stuff, but thermostats are just not one of the things that I have automated. Probably because I have like 9 of them in the house, or no more than that now, 12 or something weird. And it'd be a lot of them to automate. If I had like a cabin in the woods or a cabin at the lake or something, I think that would be great. If you just go to the internet, hey, I'm coming out there in 2 days, I'm going to just warm the place up, and all that kind of remote control would be great. Otherwise, I just program a fixed schedule, so I'm pretty happy with the manual ones.
A year or more ago, you were working on some sort of, was it just a UI for some of your home integration?
Oh, like 10 years ago, I was trying to write one, but...
I thought you were trying to...
I switched to Home Assistant. I used to use Indigo on the Mac, and about a year ago or 6 months ago, I tried to switch to Home Assistant. Couldn't import all my Indigo stuff. Tried again in 6 months and managed to just bite the bullet and retype and repair all the devices. So.
Brian Reneker says, you got any thoughts on the DEC ALPHA 64 from back in the day?
No, it was cool. I never ran VMS on the Alpha or did anything. We strictly used them as NT boxes.
Yeah.
And some of the faster ones were pretty fast. I mean, the only thing we could do with them was run Office and compile code with them, but they were fun to play with. So I had a really big NEC or NEC, however you pronounce that company's name.
Yeah, I always called them NEC, but yeah.
Yeah, I had one of their big servers, and it had like 8 hot swap SCSI bays in the front, and it was a thing of beauty. And even when the machine died, I kept the case and used it as an Intel box for years.
And a big NEC monitor, too, to go with it?
At home, I had the
21-inch?
5G, NEC 5FG.
They were 21-inch. Wasn't that the big...
Was it 21 or 17?
Maybe 19. I don't know. I thought there was one that was 21, but it could have been 19 was massive then. Man, they were heavy, too. Hat Top B. Hello, sir. I have to ask you something. Can you tell me why Windows let developers put files in so many folders? It's insane. File management's so messed up. Why didn't they tell developers where they must put files when they develop programs? Please explain it to me if you have time. He never understood the structure of file management, and it never made sense to me.
Well, it's better than Linux. I don't want to get flamed, but...
Whoa.
Because, I mean, at least with so many flavors of Unix and having to deal with so many of them, it's like, where's my IP address? Oh, it's in this place, unless it's in this place. And in the other case, it's in this place. And so you can't win, because if you don't allow people the flexibility to say, well, this is the new folder, look here first, then go back and look in the old folder. It's like the startup on Linux. Like, what is the order of execution of the shell startup scripts if you're running ZSH? Does .profile run first? Does .zshrc run after that? I assume so. But you got to know all this stuff. And so it's no picnic either in some ways. Once you know it, it's perfectly fine, of course. But on that, Windows allows you the flexibility, especially if you're running as an administrator, to save stuff anywhere, which is a bad idea, which is why you should not run as an administrator. And when you're not an administrator, you'll find that, hey, I can only really save stuff to my own home folder, and then I can't go mess up file organization. So part of that is stop doing that, because you're just hurting yourself. So
Make as big a mess as you want, or as small and nice and tidy a mess as you want in your own home directory. Just leave the operating stuff alone. Philip O'Carroll seems to be surprised with his new knowledge that, oh, it's you, the task manager guy. You're the guy I've been hunting down. Not sure if that's a good thing.
Yeah.
Then, tell me now, every time my Windows machine slows to crawl, I open Task Manager. But wouldn't you know it, Task Manager won't open for maybe 10 to 20 seconds.
Yeah. Bummer.
He says, that's just enough time for whatever cycle-thieving bastard process to exit or quiet down. Why is that happening? Is there some secret Windows signal that tells bad processes, watch out, everyone back to the stations, the boss is looking?
Yeah, I've seen that conspiracy theory. The reason Task Manager takes a long time to start is it's way bigger and much more complicated than it used to be. So my version for NT4 was like 86 kilobytes. And so it could load instantly. And so when you hit the key, plus if it was already probably mapped into memory anyway, all it had to do was execute a tiny stub and run the code and your window came up.
Yeah.
Now it's 4 megabytes or something. And it's got to load several libraries and all kinds of skinning stuff to give you the current system theme. And, these are reasonable features that they've added, but it all comes with a certain cost in size and complexity. And when I wrote Task Manager, the very first thing it did was set itself to high priority so that once it got started, it would come up and be very quick. And I don't believe they do that anymore. They did say they have a equally useful solution, but it seems to take a long time for a Task Manager to come up. So I'm not sure what their solution is or whether it's the right one or not. I have no idea.
Derto
I do wish it
8i
was faster.
Yeah, Derto 8i says, what do you expect from Windows 12? Stricter hardware requirements? More features besides AI? Will it be more popular in Windows 11? Lightweight like Windows XP?
Well, there'll be the Copilot menu, and you have your Copilot desktop. And if you right-click, you'll get the Copilot pop-up. And that's pretty much all I expect for Windows 12 is Copilot stuff. Okay. No, actually, I have no idea what to do in Windows 12. So.
They haven't asked you since you've been gone from Microsoft for 20
Yeah,
20
they
years?
stopped coming around after a couple of decades.
We had a couple of, we always like to poke some friendly fun at our Australian folks there. And I think we made a comment. I was mentioning something about the keyboard being on the left and misquoted the question, threw you into confusion, which confused me. And then you made an Australian reference, and they're good-natured about that. So Paul J. Stevens said, in Australia, it says, keyboards in Australia are mostly the common U.S. standard layout. So he confirmed that, which is nice. And then Andrew Pullen says, hey, what do you mean? Are you from Australia or somewhere with a left-handed keypad? We live down under here, not back to front. He says, by the way, 10% of the world is left-handed. The other 90% just don't understand. But he said, lefties might be 10% of the population, but they're involved in 30% of preventable accidents because they live in a right-handed world.
Enjoy your shorter lifespan.
A bit like Americans visiting England getting run over because they're not used to people driving on the correct side of the road. That
happened to Winston Churchill.
Too. Did it? Yeah, that's right.
He came to America
New York.
like in the 30s or something. He came and stepped off the curb in New York, looked the wrong way because he's used to British traffic, and smacked by a car or a truck or a bus and in the hospital for weeks.
So last time there in Shop Talk, we got onto the keypads and talking about the order of the keys. So Herbie1620 helps us out here. He says, why does the touch-tone pad have 1, 2, 3 at the top? He says, refer back to a dial telephone. And on the dial, the digits went from 1 to 0, actually 10 pulses. So the pad was 1 at the top, 0 at the bottom. For adding machines, the numbers were used from 0 to 9, and typically the motion travel is desired to be limited, so 0 is at the bottom and 9 at the top. There's a whole article in the Bell Systems Technical Journal back in the late 50s, early 60s that documented the research on the keypad layout. They took a long time to figure it out, so I never knew that, so I found that interesting.
Yeah, I would wager with phones, they were dealing with a lot of new users, whereas users with cash registers were accustomed to their machines, and they thought, what's the best thing for a new novice user who's not used to pushing buttons? I would maybe take issue with 1, 2, 3. It depends where the 0 is located on your phone, but if it's in the bottom, if it's like 5 o'clock, then you got 1 up here and 0 down there, so I can see that. But it was probably, I'm guessing, something to do with new users and putting 1 at the top.
Random Torque, we're talking about keyboards, says his keyboard's very quiet. Really like to know why the heck Microsoft insists on turning the numlock off. He says, even when I have it set to always on in the BIOS.
So you boot up in a known state, I guess. Well, that's probably configurable via the registry somewhere. I haven't ever looked that up. But
then he wants to know what your PDP-11 has for a CPU board. Is it M8186?
81, I thought it was 68.
Oh,
Yeah, it could be 8186.
Okay. Yeah. It's got a 6 and an 8 in it, and they're in one order or the other. Yeah.
Let me see if I can find it really quickly.
Sure. We'll wait here.
8190. So in case this guy's from Missouri, I'll show you.
Oh. Wow. Beautiful.
So the big white chip is the CPU, of course.
M8190, you said?
Yes.
Excellent.
AB. M8190 AB. And I've got a 18 megahertz one, which is, I don't know, AF or something weird. But
Oh, okay.
most of them are 15. I got a couple 18s. And I got them with the math chip as well.
AA Medell says, interesting. Question. Have you ever made a video about PIF versus register? Benefits, etc.?
No, I'm not up to speed on that one.
Spit P, enjoy the stories. Did you ever dig into Windows? Do you ever dig into Windows just to check it out?
Not so much anymore. I use it as a utilitarian operating system for programming and stuff. And I play around with it just to get kind of familiar with the new features around the edges and stuff. But I'm not doing deep dives into Windows anymore like I used to, I guess, because I'm not using it as much for productivity. And so I kind of stay on the well-beaten VS Code path, and I launch a terminal, or not a terminal session, a debugging session, on another machine, on a Linux machine somewhere. And that's how I spend most of my time. So I'm not doing too much Windowsy stuff in Windows.
Right. It's coding, right? That's your.
Yeah.
That's what you like to do. At Scotomoto says, Glenn, can you please ask Dave to make a video how to make and run server to control NightDriverStrip clients? Says, as far as I can find, there's a NDSCPP project, but README for it lacks for build instructions. Says, I'm not a programmer, so it's pretty hard for me without instructions. He says it's a New Year time pretty soon, so it'd be pretty good time for it.
Yeah, unfortunately, to run the server, you pretty much have to be a programmer because you have to modify the program code to get it to control your LEDs. It's getting better. Now we define things in XML, so you can actually just write an XML file and then run the server, but it's coding in XML is not much easier than coding in anything else, so it still requires some technical skill. Yeah. You can ask on the discussion forums on nightdriverled.com, and somebody will, if not me, somebody else will probably be able to help you out.
Billy Gilbert says, your shirt reminded me of a show I played when I was in a band. Says, were you at the MS 2000 release party in a parking garage at the Redmond campus?
I don't think so.
Okay.
It's possible, but I don't think so.
Fathom Goat, another one about the shirt. He says he's got the white one. He says, do you remember when they went to war with Novell with the IPX stack and won? Or the wars with OS2? How about the Windows 10 everywhere on everything era? I want to hear more.
Yeah, most of my stories are way before Windows 10. But I should go through my shirts and do a story on each shirt.
Oh, yeah, that'd be kind of neat, actually. Lucas Miglerianza. What the? You really are Dave Plummer? Oh, hey guys, it's Dave Plummer for real here. Wow, it's so rare for such an important man to land on YouTube. Damn, I'm subscribing immediately. Wow, thanks for sharing your culture with us. You are a living legend. Number one, I've known you for 25 years. Thank you for everything you've done and do over the decades. I thought that was pretty,
that's quite the pump-up email. Thanks very much. I endorse this product and or service.
Okay, and from that, let's go to Human Being 001. I want to watch these videos, but dude's cadence is beyond annoying. Like, can't you just talk normal?
I don't know what you mean. I think I talk normally.
And then, I don't give a duck. Asking about that RGB light in the background. He wants to get one, so we still got to do something on that.
One day.
Yep, one day. It'll come. And this is a question you've had before, too. Nalinux. Why the military salute?
I'm saluting the military, not vice versa. I am not military. I have no military background.
SRG Learn Code. Hey, Dave, why don't you invite Casey Muratori for lunch? I would love to watch you both talking about performance and code management.
I don't know that person. I would have to find out more about them.
Casey Muratori. Tara K, New York City. Dave, please make a video about why X64 is greater than ARM64. Did Apple have more power than Intel? Probably yes.
It's better because you can set bits directly at bit and arbitrary bit X's in memory. Whereas with the ARM, you've got to load it, set the bits, and then store it back. It's 3 steps, and it's probably almost as fast as the Intel's 1 step. But that's my answer for today, because you can set bits in memory directly.
Okay. Funky Twig says, interesting, but made my head spin. Is there a simpler, probably longer explanation for us mere mortals? Went from me understanding most to not understanding most as the video went on. Not a criticism as such. I guess it's designed for a much more technical audience than me. But yeah, there's some deep stuff in there. But
There is, but I figured that'd be my value that I would add to it, because you could probably hear that story told from a business perspective on YouTube already. But I thought I would bring some of the technical aspects to it to kind of flesh it out that way. And that was what I was trying to do there.
And again, just to wrap things up here, this is on Dave's Attic, the second
That's right.
channel.
We're not on Dave's Garage today. So if you're watching and you're a Dave's Garage fan, then you need to get subscribed to Dave's Attic, which is this channel. So just hit the subscribe button, and then you'll be subscribed. And you'll get this like once a week maybe.
And this is where we answer all the questions from both channels, from the Shop Talk episodes and from what Dave does, even the really technical stuff. Pop a question in the comments, put a question mark in it. That's the first filter, and that's what generates most of the content for these weekly episodes.
It's true. All right. Well, thanks for joining us out here in the shop tonight. Glad to have you with us. And Glenn, thanks for helping us out. Appreciate everything. And we'll see you guys next time. Good night. This little chair will be waiting for one of you, and a rocking chair for another who likes to rock, and a big armchair for two to curl up in. All next time on Dave's Garage. Appreciate it. Let me try that again. Uncomfortable silence. Click.
Yeah. Well, that's how you're supposed to hard out on YouTube. Bang, gone.
Yeah, hard out. Good night.
Yeah.